Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so now we're back on. Let me bring up the screen again. Um, is because of the response of Ravina. That Ravina says, "Afilu hachi, even so, mibayle leinish lemelaf nafshe benichuta." A person should always learn for himself to be gentle, as it says, "V'haser ka'as milibecha," remove anger from your heart. So I think that the reason why Steinsaltz interprets that the whole thing is angry, the Torah scholar should be angry and he shouldn't waver, because he's reading Ravina as a response. Yeah, okay, but you know what? Don't be too angry and don't be too stubborn. You've got to be gentle as a Torah scholar. Um, but anyway, I'm with Daniel that I'm not really sure I appreciated that understanding of what it means to be hard as iron. I mean, hard as iron can mean you uh, as Radak said, there's you don't let any obstacles be in your way. You just push forward and keep learning, even if you're stuck on something. So different ways to interpret it.
So what's the ideal? You don't want to be as soft as clay. Like you want to stick to your conviction. You don't
Right.
want to be as hard. You want to be as hard as, I don't know, something in between, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So in a sense, the Talmud here, by putting these two statements one back to back, you do get that sense, right? Is that you should, as you said, you should be firm in your convictions and yet also a gentle person, and not be angry.
I think the notion of it has less to do with how you debate, in terms of like not being wavering, but more of a dedication to study. You should always continue to study.
Okay.
You should not give up. You shouldn't like, oh, this is what I got, and I'm going to stand by, and that's going to be the hill that I'm going to die on. Is this opinion?
Right.
You should keep moving on, and you should never stop studying Torah. You should, nothing should get in your way. Like, oh, I don't feel like studying that today. No, be hard as iron, be dedicated. Look it up.
Right. So these are other interpretations that I think are very valuable. And again, as Daniel was suggesting, that's what's so great about studying Talmud. You don't have to take these opinions as God's truth. It's just, but this is the interpretation. And again, I like to point out, this is also noticed at Steinsaltz's understanding. And he's not making this stuff up. He's getting it from commentaries, but these are other earlier explanations.
I thought it was also interesting the context of this verse, "A land whose stones are iron," is that you're being given this wonderful land. I mean, it goes through a whole, surrounding that verse, it goes through a whole list of wonderful things in the land. And the stones are iron, and you can mine copper.
Right.
The stones are iron, so you can make things of iron. The stones, you can mine copper, and so on and so forth.
Right, very good. That's good. And of course, that makes sense why Rabbi Abba, who's living in the land of Israel, is going to use this verse about the land of Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we go on to this next, again, there's that stream of consciousness that the Talmud is often moves forward with. And
might as well be reading Finnegan's Wake here.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, exactly. So he says, here we have, they're talking about scholars. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I think the connection here is we've been talking about asking for rain. When do you ask for rain? So now, from that context, people who asked God of things in an unreasonable way. Now, here again, as we go through them, we would probably not see it in this way, but this is from 2,000 years ago, how they saw class and societal patterns, or societal relationships. So okay, so we get this. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonatan. He said, so Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said in the name of Rabbi Yonatan. Three people asked God something inappropriately, or asked for things inappropriately. Lishnaim hashivuhu kehogan. Two were responded to, despite the inappropriateness of the way they asked. They did receive a proper response. L'achad hashivuhu shelo kehogan. But one got an improper response. And here are the three of them. Eliezer Eved Avraham. We just read this last week's, not yesterday, but 2 weeks ago, Torah portion. Shaul ben Kish, that's King Shaul, King Saul, and Yiftach Hagiladi, and Yiftach the judge. Okay, so what are the three cases? So Eliezer Eved Avraham dichtiv v'haya ha'na'ara asher omar elecha hatina chadech. Now, this is when Eliezer goes to look for a wife, and he prays to God for a sign as to how he's supposed to figure out who the woman should be, how he should figure it out. So he gives this whole request. So the request is, please let down your pitcher that I may drink. And the young woman will respond, drink, and I'll also give your camels to drink, that she may be the one whom you've appointed for your servant Isaac. And immediately that's exactly what happens. But this was inappropriate, according to the Talmud, because she might have been lame. She might have been blind. Oh my God, how could you have brought a blind person to marry the patriarch? Like this is some horrible thing. But nevertheless, it all worked out because God brought him Rebecca, who happened to be not only a good person, did all the things that he asked, but she also, the Torah tells us, is beautiful. So
I was confused by this. How could this be inappropriate? Because as I read the story, at least, Eliezer asks for a sign that this is the one God has chosen.
Right, but he wasn't clear enough, right?
He's not prescribing God's choice.
Right, well, but he didn't.
Which would seem to me to be sort of inappropriate.
Okay, because, wait, so I'm sorry, Chuck, you're saying that it was inappropriate because of why?
No. Eleazar is asking for a sign,
right,
that this is the woman God has chosen. God has chosen.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Okay. So whoever God chooses should be okay.
How God should choose.
Right. So
to be presumptuous, say.
Right. So the comment here, I guess, is just suggesting that he wasn't specific enough. Because oh my goodness, what if the person who had filled this request, which is clearly a kindness, a compassionate person, yeah, but what if she had been lame? Oh my God, what if she had been blind? That wouldn't have been a good choice for our patriarch, and here we get to the next one. Here, look at this one.
Is the word servant, are they talking about a slave of Abraham, or is that different?
No, it's the same term actually. Eved is a servant, and it can also be understood as a slave. I don't know how many, in the biblical world, I don't know if there was that much of a difference. Like, I don't think these people are getting paid. So they probably live with the family. But yes, but Eved is the same term. It sometimes means slave and it sometimes means servant.
Okay. And I think the new JPS translation is slave.
Oh, it does? Okay.
I think so.
So here's case number 2. Okay. This one also is, it's funny. It's funny to me because we just wouldn't think this way, but in the rabbinic world and in the ancient world, classes were, and these physical attributes were important. So here's the son of Saul. So in the case of Saul, before they go to war with Goliath, right? Goliath is going to be the warrior to challenge the Jewish challenger. And Saul is desperate for somebody to go fight the guy. And he says, it shall be the man who kills him. The king will enrich him with great riches and will give him his daughter. Okay, so you're going to marry into the king's family if you can defeat this guy. Well, he didn't make it clear who he was, right? What if a slave or a mamzer, mamzer technically is a person who's a child of an illegitimate marriage, not unwed mother, but it's an illegitimate marriage. So and that person has a lot of restrictions. They can't marry anybody but another person in that same condition. So, oh my God, they could have been a slave or a mamzer, and that wouldn't have been fit to marry the daughter of the king. Oh, but it worked out okay because God made David be the one, right? So here we have the third one, the third case.
Before that,
yeah,
I read the story again, and there's nothing direct in the story that says that Saul promised these things. The Israelites are discussing this among themselves.
Oh,
the way that this has been done.
Okay, I didn't tell. That's good that you checked the reference because I didn't check. But yeah, so so it's the Israelites who are saying the king would have.
The king will do these things.
Okay.
Presumably, that comes from Saul.
Yeah.
Or at least it's reasonable to posit that it does. It doesn't explicitly say that in the story.
Okay. So they're understanding it though that way.
Yeah.
The Talmud is understanding it.
Yeah.
So here's number 3, and this is of course.
Rabbi,
yeah.
Can I have a question? A non-Jew can be a mamzer?
No, no. Mamzer is exclusively the child of a Jewish woman who has, as they say here, an adulterous union or an incestuous union. So it would be a Jewish person.
Okay, thank you.
But here they translated a slave, whereas the prior paragraph is servant. It's the same Hebrew word.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So here our third case, and this is a Haftorah. Which is it's the Haftorah for it'll come to me, but
It was a couple of weeks ago.
It's what?
We had it very recently as Haftorah.
Yeah. Who? Oh, it's Lot. It's the Torah portion, I think, with was it with Lot and his daughters?
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
So here's the case of Yiftach. Yiftach is a Giladi. I think it's a very clever play here that they, in terms of the use of a proof text. So Yiftach is a rough guy, but he's heroic. He's like an anti-hero, and he's the son of a prostitute, and he's kind of an outcast, but he's a very strong warrior. And so the Israelites come to him and say, "We need you to be our leader to fight the Philistines." So he takes over the reins. He becomes the head of the this militant group that's going to fight the Philistines, and he makes a vow where he says, "Then it shall be that whatever comes forth from the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace, it shall be to the Lord, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering," even though it might be an impure animal, right? How could you offer up whatever it was, a cat or something, right? But in this case, God responded to him unreasonably, and his daughter comes out. It's not really clear from the text, but the assumption is that she is then is sacrificed.
So what's the word play here?
Okay, so I'm getting to that. So the word play here is V'hainu deka'amar lehu navi liYisrael. He could have said to the I'm sorry. This is what the prophet said. Navi liYisrael. This is the prophet Jeremiah. There's a verse in Jeremiah. Hatzori ein begilad imrofe ein sham. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? There's a midrash that Yivtach is a Giladi, right? So here the word Gilad, and he's a Gileadite. But also he could have, according to the midrash, he should have gone to Pinchas, who was the high priest at that time, and talked to Pinchas and asked him to get him out of the vow. Pinchas is in Jewish tradition understood to be Elijah the Giladi. Elijah is also Gileadite. And there's this tradition that Elijah, just kind of lives forever, and he's connected. he's understood to be represented by Pinchas. Pinchas and Elijah are actually the same person, according to some Jewish traditions. So it's just, so when it says, is there no balm in Gilead, you know, is there no solution, no fix to this in Gilead? Because you had these two Gileadites, Yiftach and Pinchas, that is Elijah, the high priest, who could have worked it out. But the tradition tells us, or the Midrash tells us, that Yiftach refused to go to Pinchas because he said, I'm in charge here. I'm the political head. And Pinchas should come to me and let me know and say, you know, get out of this. This is ridiculous. You can't slaughter your daughter. And Pinchas' response is, hey, I'm the high priest. If this guy wants to get out of the vow, he should come to me. And because the two of them were so obstinate, this young girl dies. And so it's, oh, but then we continue here that so that's the plain, that's the cleverness, I think, of using this proof text with Gilad in it. Then we go on, it says, Uchtiv asher lo tziviti v'lo dibarti v'lo alta alibi. So in case you were wondering, wait a minute, how could God allow a human sacrifice? Why did he allow Yiftach? Well, because we have this verse also from Jeremiah, referring to pagans burning their children in burnt offerings to Baal. God says, I did not command this, I did not speak it, nor did it come into my heart. And now we're going to hear that there are three people who where God was opposed to what they were doing, but they did it anyway. They either misunderstood God, or they weren't paying attention, or they didn't know from God. So the Gemara interprets each phrase. See, because it says, Lo tziviti, lo dibarti, lo alta alibi. I did not command, I did not speak, it did not come into my heart. It's interpreted very literally that each one of these phrases is responding to a distinct case. So this is the interpretation. Asher lo tziviti, this refers to the Beno Shel Mesha Melech Moab. In 2 Kings, Moab is under pressure from the 2 Israelite kingdoms, and he's going to lose, so he sacrifices his son. V'yikach et beno habechur asher yimloch tachtav yalehu olah. He took his firstborn son who would reign after him, and he offered him as a burnt offering. That was referring to Mesha. He should not have done this. The only problem is that he then wins the war. So it's a little problematic. But God did not command this. God would never have commanded that Mesha, to be successful, put his son to death. And I did not speak, lo dibarti, is referring to this case where we just learned about Yiftach. And here's the interesting one. V'lo alta alibi ze Yitzchak ben Abraham. It did not come into my heart. This is referring to Isaac, son of Abraham. So, you know, every year we talk about, when we get to this parsha, like, oh my God, how could God have commanded this? This is so wrong. Well, here the Gemara's, at least one interpretation is, that's not what God wanted. Lo alta alibi. He did not want, Abraham just didn't get it. Now here's his interpretation is, there was no intent in God's heart that he should actually do so. It was merely a test. But you have to know that this is, and again, very clever. Lo alta alibi, the verb here, alta, is an idiom. It didn't, it didn't come into my heart. It didn't come, or we would probably say, you know, it didn't come to my thought. Didn't arise to me to think this way. But alta also means to offer up a sacrifice, to offer something up, right? It's olah, it's the verb for going up. And in the Akedah story, it opens with God telling, he's going to test Abraham, and he says, "V'ha'alehu la'olah, bincha la'olah." Raise him up as an offering, which is usually understood. I mean, the simple understanding is, I want you to slaughter him as a sacrifice. But the playing with the words, I want you to offer him up, spiritually, not sacrifice him. So it's once again a very clever playing with language. Lo alta alibi has a resonance of the text in the Akedah, where God asks Abraham to offer his son up. But again, it can be interpreted in a way not literally to offer his son up as a sacrifice. So again, some clever word plays in these interpretations.
Can I ask a question before,
Sure.
before we move on the previous page?
Yeah.
When it said top of the previous page where it says and put away evil from your flesh. I'm wondering what the word is that they use for evil, because I don't see ra in the Hebrew.
Oh, they didn't give you they didn't give you the whole text here. I'd have to look it up.
Oh, okay. So they don't have the whole Hebrew text there. Okay.
Right.
This is translating ka'as as evil, and I looked a few minutes ago at how I had translated it because I was sort of sitting in on the course at Notre Dame this fall.
Oh,
ka'as, you said?
Yeah, and I had translated it as vexation. I mean, evil occurs in the next phrase in the verse, though, I think.
Right. That's what I say, that remove anger from your heart. Ka'as is anger, as you said, vexation works. But evil, I'd have to look up the verse to see what it is, but it's not here. It's not given.
Because usually it's ra, right? Like in the Braille sheet, that's how I remember. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. Where he gives you the bold is the direct translation, and then the plain text is his adding in, which is very helpful, because by giving us the context, sometimes the Talmud only gives you the key phrase, and you have to sometimes know the context to make it to truly understand it. All right, so now we're in a new section, which relates to this what came before, which was asking God things inappropriately. Now, maybe somebody has a good interpretation of this. I was a little stuck here. Okay, so in light of the last statement, the Gemara returns to the issue of rain. Amar Rabbi Barachia, Av Knesset Yisrael sha'ala shelo kehogen. Even the congregation of Israel, the people of Israel, also entreated God, asked for something unreasonably. And yet, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Heshiva kehogen, but God responded reasonably. So what's the request? This is from the prophet Hosea. Let us know, eagerly strive to know the Lord. His going forth is sure as the morning, and he will come to us as rain. They compared the revelation of God to the rain. So in response, I kind of get the response, the first part, the response, Amar la HaKadosh Baruch Hu, BT, At sho'elet davar shepa'amim mitbakesh, ufa'amim eino mitbakesh. Aval ani ahyeh lach davar hamitbakesh le'olam, shene'amar ahyeh ketal Yisrael. So God says, the Holy One says to the Jewish people, my daughter, you request the manifestation of my presence by comparing me to rain, which is sometimes desired, sometimes not desired, right? Because sometimes you don't want the rain. Here is the example during the summer. However, I will be to you like a matter that is always desired, dew, as it is stated, I will be as the dew to Israel. Since dew is always there, we've learned this, dew is always present. And invariably, it's a blessing. Sometimes it's a super blessing, and sometimes it's just a normal blessing. And then the same kind of parallel here, and the congregation of Israel further entreated God unreasonably in another context, saying before God, Master of the universe, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. The Holy One said to her, my daughter, you ask that I be manifest to you in a matter that is sometimes visible, right, your arm, sometimes not, as the heart and arm are not covered sometimes, but sometimes they are. However, I will act so that I manifest myself for you like a matter that is always visible, as it is stated, behold, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Your walls are continually before me. So palms are always available. But here's the reason why I said I'm confused is I got the impression that what they asked unreasonably is to always have this revelatory experience with God, to be able to know God. So he says, okay, so revelation is like rain. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. But I'll be to you like dew. So isn't that saying that God is always going to be there anyway? I was a little confused by this.
I found it to be a the first one. What's unreasonable is that man is requesting God to speak in a manner I can understand. Be very upfront and direct. Like rain, I know when it's raining outside. I can feel it. I can see it. It doesn't require any translation. And God is saying,
for other people?
no, I'm going to do it my way, and it's up to you to figure it out. And I think that both of them are more of a man is trying to put terms on it, and God is just like, I run off of faith, not knowledge. You're going to have to believe, and that part is up to you, not up to me. That's the way that I see it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. That's good. Let's keep going here. The Gemara now returns to the Mishnah. All right. So here we are back. We took a little detour. Now we're coming back to the Mishnah, the very first Mishnah, in which it teaches us that Ein Shoalin et Hageshamim except Ella at the big preceding the rainy season. That so we only ask for rain. You don't ask for rain during the summer, where in Israel it doesn't come. You only ask for rain at the appropriate times. Savrua she'ela vehazkara chada miltehi. They're making, and we talked about this, I think, the first week, that a lot of the confusion or a lot of the discussion so far has been, there's two things we're talking about. We're talking about mentioning God's power to bring rain and asking for rain. And those are actually two different things. Sometimes we've been confused, or the Gemara seems to think they're both the same thing. So you mention God's power and you ask for rain at the same time. And here they're bringing it up explicitly. The sages assumed that requesting and mentioning are one and the same thing. And consequently, they asked, who's the Tana who taught this halacha? That suggested, because we're going to see that there are people who don't agree with that. The Gemara answers that Rava said,
what's a Tana?
Oh, it's okay. So a Tana is a teacher from the Mishnaic era. So that's like from 100 before the Common Era through, let's say, 200 of the Common Era.
Okay, so like, would that be comparable to a rabbi today, or
yeah,
really?
yeah. So right. So a Tana has two meanings. So it's either a rabbi or a sage of this early period. A Tana also can have a specific meaning, I don't want to say a literal meaning of a person who memorizes these early teachings. So sometimes they'll go to you'll have a statement in the Gemara where Rav is teaching, and he'll turn to the Tana and he'll say, okay, tell us what it says in this section. And he'll just repeat the whole thing. So they didn't have it written down, because originally the Mishnah and the Talmud were oral text. So the Tana can also be a specific position of a person who has memorized all of these sources and then is kind of like the early Google, or well, tell me where it says this, or tell me what it says on this page, and they recite the wording. But usually Tana is understood.
It seems extremely inefficient compared to just writing it down, but I'll leave that for a later conversation.
Well, eventually, but you're right, eventually they do write it down. That's what the Mishnah becomes, it's the oral Torah that's written down. Mm-hmm. So the Tana, so the Tana is this early teacher, this early generation sage. The Gemara answers that Rava said it's in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, who was in the Mishnah, who said that one mentions rain from the time, this is a Baraita, and a Baraita is a text from the same time as the Mishnah, but didn't make it into the authorized Mishnah text. So it's a valuable teaching, it has validity and authority, but it didn't make it into the Mishnah. So sometimes they contradict. So
this is the rabbi. This is the Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hanania.
Usually Rabbi Yehoshua is Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hanania. So we saw that there was a Baraita. So this text that was a little bit different from the Mishnah, where Rabbi Yoshua said that one mentions rain, you begin mentioning rain from the time of putting down the lulav, which would be just before, well, would basically be Shmini Atzeret, which is close to the rainy season. But Abaye says to him, then Abaye's Marle, Afilu Tema Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that one mentions rain from the first day of the festival Sukkot, so this is a week apart, these two opinions. But he could have also been the author of the Mishnah who said, one requests rain only immediately preceding the rainy season, because it could have been him too, because there's a difference between requesting, which is a discrete concept, as he translates it here, and mentioning, which is a discrete concept. You have two different ideas. You can request rain when you really want it, and you can mention the power of God to bring rain when it's a season where rain is possible. So
now, this is where I started getting really confused.
Okay.
Because it seemed to me, and I never got around to going back and tracking it down in the earlier dafs, but that they had already settled the question that it was okay to mention things more or less anytime, because that's different from requesting. And suddenly this pops up that they're the same thing.
Right, so it pops up, right, because what they're trying to do now is figure out the Gemara likes to know when there are statements that are generic. Let's see if we can go all the way up to the first Mishnah, just see it. Okay, so we have in here, we have a Rabbi Eliezer as an opinion, Rabbi Yoshua as an opinion, and they go back and forth, but then you have this general principle. You only request rain, one requests rain only immediately preceding the rainy season. See, it doesn't have a rabbi's name attached to it. So the Gemara
like to attach a rabbi to it, is that
right? Exactly. They want to know who taught them. They like to put things together.
Doesn't the next line of the Amidah say request the resurrection of the dead? So do you only say that line when it's the season where the dead resurrects?
No. That it's funny you bring that up, because we saw that, I don't know, it was the first week or the second week that came up, because they said, well, the resurrection of the dead can occur anytime, but rain only occurs at certain seasons. So they, but you're correct. That is where we put the request for rain, exactly, in that paragraph of the Amidah, because of this connection between resurrection and rain bringing life. So then they offer a different, and this is also a feature of the Talmud. Again, remembering this is they're originally oral texts, and they're writing it down now, and people's memories have different memories of how things transpired. So Ika de Amre is usually a clue that they're going to say, you know what, wait a minute, we've got a different way of reciting what we just mentioned. And in this one, it's a little different. Let us say that our Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, who said that one mentions rain from the time of putting the lulav down. That's the Shmini Atzeret. And it is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rava said, now remember, Rava up here was the one who suggested it was Rabbi Yehoshua's opinion. It was Abaye, who lived at the same time as Rava, who suggested a different way of looking at it. That either one could have been the source. Here we've got Rava said, even if you say that the ruling of the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, one can explain this by distinguishing between the terms. Requesting is a distinct notion, mentioning is a distinct notion. So we have here, Rava is the one. It's not Abaye in this version. Rava holds that either Eliezer or Rabbi Yoshua could have held this opinion, because we're making we want to make it very clear there's a distinction between a request and mentioning God's power to bring rain. Now we have another and here comes this part is the what I want to say. It's a factor in that how language is translated, because in Hebrew it's not as specific as distinctive a language as English, and so terms can mean multiples. And here we're going to see this. So the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ha'over lifnei. Okay, so here's the passage. In the Mishnah, it was stated, Rabbi Yehuda said, with regard to the one who passes before the ark as prayer leader on the concluding day of Sukkot, that's Shmini Atzeret, the prayer leader of the additional prayer, Musaf, mentions rain. That's the first time we start mentioning rain. That's true to this day. We start mentioning Mashiva Ruach Morida Gashem at Musaf on Shmini Atzeret, while the leader of the morning prayer does not say that. The reverse is the case at the conclusion of the period of mentioning rain, which is Passover time. As the leader of the morning prayer mentions rain, you're still mentioning rain, Mashiva Ruach Morida Gashem, in the morning service on Pesach. But at the additional prayer, we recite the prayer of Tal, and we stop mentioning rain. So but now the Gemara is going to bring up a contradiction. Wait a minute. You said, or we saw in a Baraita, we're going to see it. No, I'm sorry, I guess it's coming up, 5a. Ad matai sho'alin et geshamim. How long does one request rain? Well, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ad she'avor haPesach. Rabbi Meir Omer, ad she'avor Nisan. So Rabbi Yehuda, who we assumed was saying over here, you mentioned we say Mashiva Ruach Morida Gashem until Shachari service, the morning service on Pesach. Here he says until Passover has passed, until the end of the holiday. So it's not the first day of the holiday. According to this Rabbi Yehuda statement, we go all the way through Pesach. Rabbi Meir suggests you go all the way through Nisan, the whole month of Pesach. But you see the contradiction here. One, it seems like we understood over here, it was the morning of Passover. Here it's the end of Passover holiday. So Rav Chisda has a solution. Lo kashya. Kan lishol, kan leazkir. The Baraita over here, where he says until Passover is passed, is that's you request rain. Again, here's the distinction again. Difference between asking for rain and mentioning God's power to bring rain. So in the Baraita, we keep asking for rain until the end of Passover, but we only mention Mashiva Ruach Morida Gashem up until the first day. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda holds that one continues requesting rain until the end of Passover, but with regard to mentioning Mashiva Ruach Morida Gashem, I just said this, already on the first day of the festival, one ceases to do so. So here's the problem. Ula, who is another Talmudic rabbi, you can see these rabbis are not, they mince no words. Ula said, Rav Chisda's teaching is as difficult to accept as vinegar is to teeth and to smoke in the eyes. Basically, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He elaborates, if when one does not yet request rain at the beginning of the rainy season, one nevertheless mentions rain. Okay, so this means, and we're going to learn about this on the next page, that even in the land of Israel, we start mentioning God's power to bring rain, Mashiva Ruach Morida Gashem, on Shmini Atzeret, but we do not ask God. We do not put the request for rain in the blessing in the Amidah, the ninth blessing of the Amidah. We don't ask rain until the 7th of Cheshvan, a little more than a week away after Shmini Atzeret. So he says, so Ula says, wait a minute. We don't request rain right away, even though we started mentioning rain. In a case when one requests rain, during Passover, according to that second explanation, isn't it right that you should also mention rain? Basically saying, how can you stop talking about God bringing rain at this season, but you're still asking for rain, right? In the second blessing, according to this Rav Chisa's solution, Rabbi Yehuda is teaching us on the first day of Passover, we stop saying Mashiva Ruach Midagashem, God's power to bring rain, but we're still asking for it. That doesn't make any sense. So the Gemara cites an additional resolution to the apparent contradiction. Rav Yosef said, what's the meaning of the phrase Ad Ya'avora Pesach? Does it have to mean the Passover holiday is over? Maybe it means until the first prayer leader who descends to pray has passed before the ark. Yeah, over al what was the phrase? The phrase is come on. Over al lifnei hateva. Same word, same verb, over. Over lifnei hateva. So maybe it means until the first prayer leader who descends to pray has passed before the ark for the morning prayers on the first day of Passover. According to this explanation, the Mishnah and the Baraita specify the same time period for the end of the mention of the request for rain. Okay, so here's the question. Abai said to Rav Yosef, is there a request for rain on a festival? Right, you've said that so according to Rav Yosef's solution, we stop asking for rain, we stop mentioning rain on that first day of Passover, and we stop requesting rain. But Abai says, when do we ever request for anything on a festival? The Amidah, we don't ask for anything. It's a special Amidah for the festivals, like Shabbat. We don't ask for things. The request for rain is included in the 9th blessing of the Amidah, the blessing of years, but it's not recited on Shabbat or festivals. So how could you say we stop asking for rain? If the term Passover in the Baraita is referring to the entire festival, this includes the festival in the intermediate festival days, during which the 9th blessing of the Amidah is recited. But according to your interpretation, Rav Yosef, the Baraita refers only to the first day, and we stop asking for rain on the festival, which we never do. So that doesn't make sense. Okay, well, but the Gemara cites the response of Rav Yosef to Abaye. That's true. Shoel miturgaman. Okay, now we have a different solution. Yes, the Baraita is speaking of the first day of Passover. However, it does not refer to the request for rain recited in the Amidah. That's not what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about the 9th paragraph of the Amidah, which we don't recite on Passover. Rather, I was talking about the miturgaman. That's the translator, and of the Torah portion. This special miturgaman person would recite a request for rain after the festival prayers. The Gemara asks, but would the miturgaman, the disseminator, request a matter that the community does not need? Right? As there is no need for rain on Passover, why would the miturgaman recite a request for it? Oh, wait, did I skip something here? Oh, I did skip something here. Oh, sorry about that. Let me go back a little bit. After Ula was dismissive of Rav Chisda, he had his own solution. The solution is that there are two Tanaim who express different rulings in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. That is, Rabbi Yehuda is an early Tana, and he taught students, and one student thought that he held that one both mentions and requests rain during Passover, and the other Tana held that Rabbi Yehuda holds that one neither mentions nor requests rain after the morning prayer of the first day of Passover. They have two different understandings of Rabbi Yehuda's teaching. So that was it. So then we came in with Rav Yosef's explanation, and then in the end of it is, rather it's clear, as Ula explained, there's two Tanaitic versions of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Two different students had different explanations. They picked it up differently. Let's keep going here. So now Rabba Amar, my ad she'avor Pesach. Oh, we're back to this phrase. What does it mean until Pesach has passed? It means until after the time for the slaughter of the Paschal lamb has passed, which would be the afternoon before Passover, the afternoon of the 14th of Nisan, until the beginning of Passover. And according to this opinion, the practice at the beginning of the time for praying for rain is like that of the end. Just as at the beginning of the rainy season, we mention rain, right? We mention rain on Shmini Atzeret, Mashiva Ruach M'Rida Gashem, but we don't request it until after the holiday, until the 7th of Cheshvan, later, and in the diaspora even later. So too at the end, on the first day of Passover, one mentions rain, Mashiva Ruach M'Rida Gashem, but doesn't request it. We stop requesting it at Mincha on before Passover. The request for rain ends on the eve of Passover, Mincha, while the mention of rain continues until the morning service. So now that was Rabba's opinion. Now a scholar, Abaye, again, these guys are live at the same time. They're two scholars who are living at the same period. And he said, Amar le Abaye, Bishlama techilato mazkir, hazkara nami ritsui she'elahi, ela sofo, my ritsui she'elahika, ela mechavarta kedu'ula. Granted, at the beginning of the rainy season, one mentions rain before requesting it, as mentioning rain is also an appeasement. It's a request to God in advance of the forthcoming request, right? We mention God has the power to bring rain because we're going to ask it as soon as it's most tenable to ask for rain. You don't want to ask it for a whole bunch of reasons on the beginning of, or at Shmini Atzeret, which we haven't got to yet, but eventually the explanation that's given is that, people have to get home. They don't want it raining on them when they get home, but we do want rain at this time. But the question is, why would you, however, at the end of the season, what appeasement, what need would you to request, or toward a request is there that would necessitate the mention of rain after one has ceased requesting it? Why would you need to mention that God has the power to bring rain in the morning of Pesach when you no longer need it? The Gemara again concludes, rather, it's as clear as Ula explained it. That there are two students of Rabbi Yehuda took different understandings away from his teaching. And then we have a conclusion. Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda. The halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So then we have Amar le Rabbi Zera le Rabbi Asi, Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan hachi. Now this is, once again, we're questioning teachers and and students' understandings of what they said. So here, Rabbi Yochanan is the first generation of Talmudic rabbis. He lives in the land of Israel. And he says that the halacha is in accordance with this earlier opinion by the rabbi of the Mishnaic period, Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Zera says, let's see, we can finish this up quickly. Rabbi Zera said to Rabbi Ashi, did Rabbi Yochanan teach this? Is that what he said? Because didn't we learn, and here's where it comes in the dates, on the 3rd of Mar Cheshvan, one starts to request rain. Rabban Gamliel says one starts on the 7th of Mar Cheshvan. And with regard to the Mishnah, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yochanan's preeminent student, said the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Gamliel. So Rabbi Elazar agrees that the halacha is according to the opinion of Rabban Gamliel, which we start asking for rain on the 7th of Cheshvan. Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Elazar is Rabbi Yochanan's preeminent student. So our assumption is if Rabbi Elazar taught this, that the halacha is according to Rabban Gamliel, Rabbi Yochanan must have taught it because Rabbi Elazar would follow Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. If the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, and we mention and request rain on Shmini Atzeret, then we have this difference of opinion. So how much more do I have to go today? So we got a ways to go. All right, we'll pick it up next time. Well, let's get at least through this. Amarle. So Rabbi Yossi says to Rabbi Zera, Gavra agavra ka ramet. Are you raising a contradiction from the statement of one man against the statement of another man? That is, two people can have two opinions. Although Rabbi Elazar was Rabbi Yochanan's student, their opinions need not be consistent with one another. But if you wish, say that it's not that difficult. Rabbi Elazar's ruling here is referring to the request for rain, which begins on the 7th of Mar Cheshvan. Rabbi Yochanan's ruling there is about mentioning rain up here, where Rabbi Yochanan said we follow Rabbi Yehuda. And that begins on the 8th day of that begins on Shmini Atzeret. But then we have Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara says, wait a minute, but Rabbi Yochanan, didn't he say at the same time that one requests rain, one mentions it? You do it at the same time. So that suggestion of above doesn't really hold, because Rabbi Yochanan isn't distinguishing between asking and requesting. The Gemara answers that ruling was stated only with regard to ceasing the request and mention of rain, that you do it at the exact same time. Although Rabbi Yochanan maintains that one stops requesting and mentioning rain on the same date, which would be Pesach, he does not hold that one begins to do both at the same time. But the Gemara says, okay, wait a minute, we got the tape. Didn't Rabbi Yochanan explicitly say, when one begins to mention rain, one begins to request it. When one ceases to request rain, one ceases to mention. This clearly indicates that in his opinion, there's no discrepancy between the dates when one begins reciting the two formulations. We got the tape. It says right here. Okay, wait a minute. Now we get another possible resolution to this question. Ela la kasha. It's not a question. Halan halahu. This statement, where Rabbi Yochanan ruled in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Gamliel, is for us who live in Babylonia, where he said, up above, he said, because we assume Rabbi Elazar is teaching Rabbi Yochanan's teaching. And it's Rabban Gamliel's opinion, which is we begin asking for rain on the 7th of Cheshvan. That's for us who live in Babylonia and start to pray for rain later. Whereas that statement of the Mishnah is for them in the land of Israel. They say they mention and request at the same time. The Gemara asks, what is different with regard to us in Babylonia that we do not request rain immediately after Sukkot? And it's because the different agricultural cycles. In Babylonia, we still have fruit in the field. We don't want rain to fall that quickly. However, the inhabitants of Eretz Yisrael, also have pilgrim. But the question is, they don't want. However, the inhabitants of the Eretz Yisrael, also have pilgrims who need to travel for a significant time to reach their homes after the festival. They do not want it to rain on them. That's why you have. Wait a minute.
That was really confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, wait.
That would be an argument for ending later in Eretz Yisrael.
Right, right. Which is right. So that's the 7th, which is the 7th of Cheshvan.
Yeah, but that contradicts what they had just said. That
right.
That
this statement rules in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel is for us. What is different in regard to us that we do not require? The reason is that we have fruit. We don't know. Oh, no. This is a challenge. However, wait a minute. You're saying that according to this opinion, they say, according to this opinion, then, in the land of Israel, according to Rabbi Yochanan, people should mention rain, Mashiva Ruach Moed Gashem, and ask for rain at the exact same time. And they said, whoa, wait a minute. How can that be? Because even in the land of Israel, you'd have pilgrims who would need to travel for a significant time to reach their homes. They don't want it to rain on them either. So wait a minute, Rabbi Yochanan, how can that be? So now we get a little more detail. When Rabbi Yochanan said this ruling in the Mishnah, he was referring to a period of time when it made sense, when the temple is not standing. Therefore, in Eretz Yisrael, one can immediately request rain, right? He lives in a time when there's no temple.
No
pilgrims. So there's no pilgrims.
Yeah.
You don't have that issue. So you could state that in Israel, you mention rain and you ask for rain at the same time. You don't have to worry about those people coming home because nobody's going home. There's no pilgrims. Therefore, in Eretz Israel, one can.
I have a question about the diaspora. Why wouldn't diasporic Jews mention / request rain at days that make sense to them? Like, why are we basing this on Israel's calendar rather than Indiana's calendar?
No, exactly. That's what he's saying up here. That in Babylonia, we ask for rain. We mention rain because this is the rainy season, at least in that part of the world. It's certainly the rainy season, and we are connected to Israel in the sense that we care about what happens in Israel. So we can mention that God's power to bring rain begins at this time period, but we don't need it. So we don't start asking for rain. Only the Jews in Israel would ask for rain. But what about those pilgrims? Well, now we don't have pilgrims anymore because there's no temple. So they can request for rain as soon as the period for rain would begin. So now the Gemara comments, now that you've arrived at this answer, one can say that both this statement and that statement are for them. Oh, both statements work for Eretz Yisrael. So wait a minute, why do you have to distinguish between, because they could ask later, a little bit later, or not. And yet it is not difficult, as the statement here, that one waits before requesting rain applies at a time when the temple is standing, while the ruling there, one requests rain right after the festival, is for a time, right after the festival, is referring to the time when the temple is not standing. Wait, did I get that right? It is not here that one waits before requesting for rain, and here you can start right after the festival. Okay, you know what? I don't want to get into this next statement because we start talking about the diaspora where we have 2 festival days, and that'll take us too long to talk about why this is an issue in the diaspora. So why don't we start with that next time? And we'll go through that. So let's stop here. And I will send this, I'll have this, the recording put up sometime this week. And I'll keep sending out. I promise to be better about sending my notes out on the proper time because I put it now in my calendar. So you should get it Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. You should get notes for Daf Hey, for Daf number 5, and we'll begin with this, with the idea of why the diaspora. What do you do if there's a 2-day holiday? When do you start saying we're asking for rain? And a 2-day holiday. So, okay, everybody. I hope you have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a couple of questions? You can turn the recording off, but I have a couple of questions. Are you able to?
Okay, sure.
Well, the first one has to do with the 4 winds from the previous daf. It's on page 16.